Here we have a new commander deck from Modern Horizons 3. This is Boomerjund, the commander deck, also Goyf Tribal. And I like this deck for a lot of reasons actually. It's very thematic, flavorful, nostalgic, but also it's good. And basically what I've done here is taken my modern Boomerjund deck and converted it into a commander deck. Because this card right here cares about playing Goyfs. So let's take a look at the commander here. It's a Jund deck, so its colors are black, red, and green. The commander is Disa Nuts. Okay, I made the joke. We'll got that over with. So Disa Nuts says whenever a Goyf permanent card is put into your graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, put it onto the battlefield. So you want to be playing Goyfs. Also though, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a Tarmogoyf token. And also it's a 5/6. And I just want to say, this Tarmogoyf token looks awesome. I like that. It's funny, you know, Tarmogoyf, the card which was, you know, once $200 or whatever, is now it's now a token. But it looks cool. So you want to be playing Goyfs, but also this first ability means that you want to be putting them into the graveyard from places other than the battlefield. Kind of the main way that we're going to do that is by mill and discard. So in this deck, I have most of the Goyfs. There aren't really that many of them, let alone that many good ones, but there are enough to make this ability quite relevant. So let's take a look at the Goyfs now. So here are the actual Goyfs in the deck. By that I mean they have the creature type Goyf. There are more in the deck, but those ones are going to be shapeshifters. These are almost all of the ones we could actually be playing in the deck in Jund colors. There's at least one that I chose to not play. I believe it's Magnivore. It just didn't seem that good with what the deck was doing, but 10, these ones are pretty decent. So starting off with the most obvious one, Tarmogoyf, the inspiration for the deck. It's kind of what everything does, is that it cares about things in the graveyard, and its power and toughness is equal to those things. So Tarmogoyf, its power and toughness is equal to the number of card types in all graveyards, and its toughness is equal to that +1. So that's kind of what the deck is doing. Nethergoyf does the same thing, but it only cares about your graveyard. It only costs 1 mana though, but you can escape it for 3 mana and exiling some cards from your graveyards. Terravore here, you got a 3 mana Goyf. It has Trample, which is pretty relevant, and its power and toughness are equal to the number of lands in all graveyards. Some of the newer Goyfs from the pre-con here, these are going to be much better than the old ones because, you know, they were designed for Commander. Here's one of them, Polygoyf. It's quite good. It's basically a Tarmogoyf. It costs 3 mana, but it has Trample and Myriad. So, you know, for 1 more mana, getting Trample and Myriad is a pretty big deal, so that's actually quite good. Barrowgoyf here is very cool. It has Death Touch and Lifelink. It costs 3 mana. It has the Tarmogoyf thing where its power and toughness is equal to the number of card types in all graveyards, and its toughness is that +1. But whenever it does combat damage to a player, you mill that many cards. If you do, you can put a creature card from among them into your hand. So having a Goyf that mills is really good because, you know, it powers up all your Goyfs, and there's a lot of other kind of graveyard synergy. If you mill over a Goyf when you have Disa in play, you just put it into play, which is actually kind of insanely powerful. You could potentially be doing some really broken stuff with this deck if you built it in the right way, if you built it to be as competitive as possible, because you can literally just tutor any creature out of your deck and put it into play for as low as like 1 mana. That's not really how I've built it, but it is something you can be doing. Pyrogoyf, another new one here. This one is really cool actually. So 4 mana, has the Tarmogoyf ability here. And it says, whenever Pyrogoyf or another Goyf enters the battlefield under your control, that creature deals damage equal to its power to any target. So you could one-shot someone with this. You could potentially just win the game if you have enough power and toughness. Like say it's you know, far enough along in the game where your Goyfs have 5-6 power. If somehow you're able to just like mill a bunch of them over or something, you could just win the game with this. This is a very powerful Goyf. Goyf, the classic, you know, we always point to Tarmogoyf for being the Goyf, but really I think Goyf is kind of the original one, isn't it? It has the Tarmogoyf-esque ability, not exactly the same. Its power is equal to the number of creature cards in all graveyards, and its toughness is that +1, so it only cares about creature cards, but it costs 4 mana. Not that good, but it is very thematic, and it can still be quite big, so we're playing it. Detritivore here is kind of an interesting one. So its power and toughness are equal to the number of non-basic land cards in just your opponent's graveyards, not even yours. But it has a pretty good ability here. You can suspend it for X, 3 in a red, so say if you want X to be 1, you have to pay 5 mana. Whenever a time counter is removed from it while it's removed from the game, destroy a non-basic land. So this can be your land destruction that you just kind of incidentally have in your deck, but you can also be putting this into play for free. This can actually get pretty big because, you know, lots of people are going to be playing fetch lands and things like that. So later on in the game, this can actually be a pretty big creature. Got a Mortivore here. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of creature cards in all graveyards, and you can regenerate it for just a black. So that's actually not so bad. This is one that you do see in commander decks, even nowadays, just like commander decks that have black in them, because it is pretty decent being able to regenerate for just a black. It is still good even in, you know, modern Magic. And a Necrogoyf, originally out of Modern Horizons 2. Its power is equal to the number of creature cards in all graveyards, so its toughness is just always 4. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player discards a card, which is pretty good for you actually, because if you have Disa in play, you just discard a Goyf and put it into play. So only 10 real Goyfs, but we have some kind of supplemental Goyfs with shapeshifters that we're going to take a look at now. So here are the supplemental Goyfs. There are 7 of them, so those plus the others bring the total Goyf count up to 17. It's not a huge amount, but it's enough to let the deck do what it wants to do. And there are other shapeshifters that I could be playing in here, but I didn't put all of them in because a lot of them are really not that good. They can be good in decks that care about tribal synergy with like enter the battlefield effects and things where you just want to put a creature of that type into play. That's not what this deck is doing. So like, say for example, something like Universal Automaton. I'm not playing that because even if I put it into play for free, I have a 1/1 that does nothing. But these ones do more than that. So Masked Vandal here, this one is good because it's a Goyf and also it's artifact and enchantment removal for just 2 mana. Realmwalker is great because you can get card advantage by looking at the top card of your library and casting creature spells. Bloodline Pretender, it's okay. It can get pretty big, you know, it's a Goyf, but also it grows whenever another creature of the chosen type is put onto the battlefield under your control. So, you know, Goyfs basically, they more often than not, they're just big, and this can be big. Same with Tori and Mauler, same idea. It gets big. There's a Grave Shifter here. This one is quite good, actually. Basically, it's like a Grave Digger, but it's also a Goyf, so that's good. You can rebuy creatures from your graveyard. Chameleon Colossus is pretty sweet. I also play this in my Ayula Bear tribal deck, but this one can get really big. It's a Goyf, it has Changeling, it has protection from black, but then for 4 mana, you can basically double its power and toughness, and you can do that multiple times, so you can make this one really big. I think Cairn Wanderer is pretty cool, actually. It's a 4/4 for 5, but you could easily just put that into play for free with Disa. But it says, as long as a creature card with flying is in a graveyard, so any graveyard, not just yours, it has flying. The same is true for Fear, First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Haste, Landwalk, Lifelink, Protection, Reach, Trample, Shroud, and Vigilance. So this card kind of dates itself because you see abilities here that aren't really used anymore, and you don't see abilities that are used nowadays, like you have Shroud instead of Hexproof, and like Fear instead of Menace, things like that. But there's a surprising amount of these keywords actually in the deck, but it cares about your opponents too, so you can get a lot of keywords off of this. So those are all the shapeshifters, as I said. Those plus the actual Goyfs brings the count up to 17, which is not a lot, but enough to make the deck work. But we do have quite a few other creatures that kind of go along with the other theme of this deck, which is Boomer Jund, the commander deck. So the theme of Jund in Modern was basically that you would just play good cards and you would outvalue your opponent by grinding them out. That's what a lot of these cards do. A lot of them are just taken straight from that deck, and then there are some other ones here that work with the commander in specific for discarding and milling things. First off, there's a new card here out of Modern Horizons 3, Grist, Voracious Larva. I think this card is very cool, actually. It's just basically a 1-mana Planeswalker, so a 1/2 Death Touch, that's kind of whatever, but whenever Grist or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it entered from your graveyard or you cast it from your graveyard, you can pay a green. If you do, exile Grist, then return it to the battlefield transformed. So that's very easy to do in this deck. You can flip this very easily. But on the Planeswalker side, it starts off with 3 loyalty. You can +1 to make a 1/1 black and green insect, then mill 2. So actually, I like that already, the fact that it can +1 to mill you, because you want to get kind of as much mill as you can. You put a Death Touch counter on the token if a black card was milled this way. -2, destroy an artifact or enchantment. So artifact and enchantment removal is always great in Commander. Then -6, I don't really care so much about the -6, but it's there. For each creature card in your graveyard, you make a token as a copy of it, except it's a 1/1 black and green insect. Now this card, Hermit Druid, almost feels like it was made for this deck. It's a 2-mana creature. You can pay a green and tap it. Reveal cards from the top of your library till you reveal a basic land. Put that card into your hand and all other revealed cards into your graveyard. So you could build this deck with 0 basic lands in it, which means that if you activate Hermit Druid, you literally take all of your Goyfs from your deck and put them straight into play if you have this and Disa in play. That's not the way I've built the deck, but I've built it with very few basic lands. So there is a good chance of activating this and being able to just dump a ton of Goyfs into play, which is kind of crazy, especially seeing as one of them would be Pyro Goyf. So you can kind of see where combo potential is going, because you could build this with no basic lands, have Pyro Goyf in your deck, and then just activate this with Disa in play and win. Fauna Shaman here is awesome for the deck, because if you have this plus Disa in play, it basically reads green tap, put a Goyf into play, search your library for a creature, and put it into your hand. 6 is a card that's not as thematic specifically for this deck. Well, actually it is, because it goes really great with kind of the philosophy of Boomer Jund, in that it's just kind of a good card that really outvalues your opponent. And actually it does help with the other themes, because it does mill you. But this one can get you so much value in just this one 3-mana card. You know, you get card advantage by putting lands into your hand, you get card advantage by casting stuff out of your graveyard. There's you know, this card does a lot. 2 cards here which you want to be in your graveyard, Anger and Brawn. So since we want to dump stuff into our graveyard from our deck and our hand, these are ones that we would like to do that with, you know, giving our creatures trample and haste. Both of them seem quite good. 3 cards here that were just ported over directly from my Modern deck. I literally took my Modern deck and made it into this Commander deck. I didn't even change the sleeves. These are still the same sleeves that I was playing the last time I played my Boomer Jund deck in Modern, and I believe I went 1/4 drop. But we've got Seasoned Pyromancer, Dark Confidant, and Scavenging Ooze. So these are ones that were played in Boomer Jund. Seasoned Pyromancer actually is still, even in Modern, still quite playable. It actually works quite well with this Commander too, because it allows you to discard things. So you can discard Goyfs and put them into play. Scavenging Ooze, it's just a good card. It doesn't really synergize with the Commander, but it's just a good green card. It's graveyard hate, it's life gain, it can get big. It's Jund. There's a Dark Confidant here. You know, Tarmogoyf and Dark Confidant, they were, for the longest time, kind of menaces in Modern. You know, they went hand in hand. You would play a bunch of Dark Confidants and Goyfs in your Jund deck, and that's what you did. So Dark Confidant, it would feel weird to be playing a Boomer Jund deck and not have this in it, so we've got it in here. But that being said though, it's still pretty good. You know, it's 2 mana card advantage in Commander. Now another card which was in Jund for a long time was Bloodbraid Elf. I did think about playing actual Bloodbraid Elf in this deck, but we got this new card which is basically that, but more for Commander. So instead of that, we're playing Bloodbraid Challenger. It came out of the pre-con here. It's basically Bloodbraid Elf. It costs 1 mana more, but it has the escape ability. So it has Cascade, Haste, it's a 4/3, but you can keep on reusing its abilities. So for 5 mana, you can exile stuff from your graveyard and reuse it. So that's pretty cool, because even if we mill this over or something, we can still get it back and be cascading. So this one is, it's actually quite good, I think. Sir Conrad, if we're doing things like discarding and milling, we probably want to be playing Sir Conrad because, you know, this is a very popular commander card for good reason. Argentum Masticore is a pretty cool one. So this is one that I didn't even consider until a friend of mine pointed it out, but actually works quite well with what this deck wants to do. So it's out of Phyrexia here. A lot of people might not know what this card does. I didn't know what it did until I actually read it, because nobody really plays it. But it's a 5 mana 5/5 artifact creature. It has first strike and protection from multicolored, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice this unless you discard a card. When you discard a card this way, destroy target non-land permanent an opponent controls with mana value less than or equal to the mana value of the card discarded this way. So, since we want to be discarding Goyfs, this can be really cool actually, because rather than seeing this as a drawback, it could be kind of an upside, because it just, if you have Disa in play and a Goyf in your hand, this allows you to just put that Goyf into play and destroy something every turn. Eventually, probably you'll run out of Goyfs, or maybe you won't, but even if you get to do this, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 times, that seems really good. So I think this card is pretty cool for this deck. Then here we have Coram, the Undertaker. This is the alternate commander that came out of the precon, but obviously it's going to be good with the deck if it's the alternate commander that came with the deck, but yes, it is very good. So 4 mana 0/5. It gets +X/+O, where X is the greatest power among creature cards in all graveyards. When it attacks, each player mills a card, which is very good to go along with, you know, Goyfs and Disa, because with the Goyfs, they care typically about the number of whatever in all graveyards. And even though each player only mills 1, the fact that everyone mills is pretty big, because that can really, you know, up the power and toughness of your Goyfs. But then, during each of your turns, you can play a land or cast a spell from among cards in graveyards that were put there from libraries this turn. So you can be taking your opponent's stuff. This can be really good if you need to hit your land drops. You can even play their lands if you attack with this and they mill a land. So this card does do a lot, and I do quite like it. For the remainder of the creatures, there's just these 3, and they're here for ramp. In Commander, you want pretty much as much ramp as you can get. So we've got 3 of them here. Birds of Paradise, Ignoble Hierarch. This one is very thematic with being Jund, and Sakura Tribe Elder. Some more ramp here in the form of non-creatures. So we've got Cultivate, Farseek, 3 visits, Nature's Lore, and Open the Way here. I'm a big fan of Open the Way, actually. This is one that I play in almost all of my green decks. These are all pretty standard, but then there's also this card right here, Invasion of Zendikar. This one gets you 2 basic lands, and it can also flip over into a creature which ramps you. Another reason why this is in the deck is because Goyfs tend to care about the number of card types that are in graveyards, so we want to maximize the number of card types that we could potentially have in the graveyard. And Battle is a unique card type, so having this Battle in our deck allows our Goyfs to potentially have 1 more power and toughness, which could actually be pretty big. And then a bit more ramp here, obviously Soul Ring. We've also got Arcane Signet, and a couple of talismans here, Impulse and Resilience. Here are some cards that synergize really well with Disa's second ability, because they allow us to essentially put Goyfs directly into play. So Faithless Looting, it's great because, you know, 1 mana, draw and discard 2. If we've got Disa into play, that could be just 1 mana, draw 2, put 2 Goyfs into play. Pretty great. Demand Answers is the same idea. This one is instant speed though for 2 mana. We have a Tortured Existence, which is really cool actually. You can pay a black, choose and discard a creature card, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So say if we've got some Goyfs in our graveyard that were put there when Disa wasn't in play, they're just going to live in the graveyard. But this can allow us to rebuy them back to our hand to start discarding them and just putting them back into play. So this card is perfect for this deck. Survival of the Fittest. It's, I mean, once again, it's perfect for the deck. It's basically the same idea as Fauna Shaman, but in enchantment form. Entomb, search your library for a card, put that card into graveyard, then shuffle. So if Disa is in play, this is just 1 mana instant, look for any Goyf and just put it into play. Buried Alive is that at sorcery speed, but you get 3 of them. And then Fable of the Mirror Breaker here. It does allow us to discard things, so it works in the same way as these, but this is one that I also just kind of ported over directly from my Boomerjund deck. And, you know, I like that. It feels nostalgic, it's good, it's a good value card. You can never really go wrong with a Fable, so we've got it in here. We've got a decent amount of removal in the deck here. A lot of these are directly from the Boomerjund deck. Like, I could literally be doing a deck tech on Boomerjund and have this screen right now, and you wouldn't really know the difference. And I think that's kind of cool. So, Lightning Bolt, not as great in Commander as it is in Modern, but we're playing it for the Boomerjund part. Same idea with Terminate. Assassin's Trophy is quite good. People play that in Commander a lot because of how flexible it is. But yeah, definitely it's in both decks. Same idea with Coil against Command. It's great value. It's removal. One thing you could actually do with this if you wanted is you could have yourself discard a card and just put a Goyf into play. So I kind of like that flexibility. And then Damnation here. It was played in sideboards of Boomerjund, and it's also, you know, it's a board wipe. People play it in Commander. It's quite good, and it fits very well in this deck. This card here doesn't really fit with any of the other categories, but it's a brand new card, and it's perfect for this deck. It came in the pre-con Tarmogoyf Nest. It's Enchant Land. Enchanted Land has 1 and a green tap, make a Tarmogoyf. So obviously we're going to be playing it in this deck. It's about as flavorful as you can get, so yeah, definitely we've got the Tarmogoyf Nest in here. The same idea with Altar of the Goyf right here. It's a 5-mana artifact. One thing you might not notice is that this is a Lurgoyf. It's a Kindred artifact Lurgoyf, so if you mill this over or something when Disa is in play, you just put this into play. That's very relevant. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, it gets +X till end of turn, where X is the number of card types among cards in all graveyards, and Lurgoyfs you control have trample. So it kind of turns everything you control into having the Tarmogoyf effect. But yeah, once again, perfect for this deck. It is a Lurgoyf. Definitely we're playing this. A couple of ways here to protect your creatures. A lot of the things this deck wants to be doing cares about having Disa in play, so you want it to stay in play, so putting a Lightning Greaves on it can be pretty important. And then Asceticism kind of does that, but for all your creatures, you can regenerate as well. So ways to protect your creatures here. And then this card that I want to talk about, Ashes of the Fallen. This is a card that nobody really played, but has become popular for this deck specifically, but for good reason. 2 mana, it's an old card here. As it comes into play, you choose a creature type. You're going to choose Lurgoyf. Each creature card in your graveyard has the chosen type in addition to its other types. So what this means is that if you choose Lurgoyf, if you have this and Disa in play, any creature that goes into your graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield will just go onto the battlefield. This is kind of the type of card that can allow this deck to turn into, you know, its final form. Because with this, as well as say something like Maskwood Nexus, those kind of cards that allow you to use Disa's second ability right here. You know, I just realized I kept saying second ability, but it's actually her first ability. But anyway, if you build your deck in a way to take advantage of this kind of synergy, that allows you to just tutor out any creature from your deck and put it directly into play. So if you put combos in your deck and you maximize the way to get these in play at the same time, you can make your deck very combo-centric and probably quite consistent at that point. So I kind of feel like if you wanted to just maximize the power level of the deck, that's what you might want to be doing. Like, you would play this plus Maskwood Nexus and all of those kind of effects that you can find. I only have this one in the deck. I could be playing Maskwood Nexus as well. It does basically the same thing. It has the added ability of being able to make shapeshifters. I don't really care so much about that for this deck, but I basically see this as a 2-mana version of Maskwood Nexus for this deck. But look at this, we got Planeswalkers. This could once again be a scene that comes directly from a deck tech for Boomerjund, because these cards were in my Boomerjund deck, and for that reason, we're playing them in here for several reasons actually. That's one of them, you know, thematic and nostalgia. Another thing is that we want Planeswalkers in the deck because it ups our card type count for our Tarmogoyf ability, but also these cards are just kind of good, but they do synergize for other reasons as well. Wrenn and 6 is mostly just good, but we are playing kind of a mill theme, and this can return lands from our graveyard to our hand, so that can be pretty relevant, but also it's just a really good card. Liliana, though, it is a good card, but also The +1 is quite good with Disa because each player discards a card, so normally you don't want to discard, but in this deck you do want to. So it's like +1, your opponents discard one, and you put a Goyf into play. That seems pretty good to me. Then Grist here. Grist is pretty awesome. I do like Grist quite a lot. It's just really good value. It's removal on a Planeswalker, it mills us, it puts stuff into play. And actually, since we have a decent number of shapeshifters in the deck, the +1 with Grist can get some extra value by milling over those shapeshifters, which would be insects. That's it for the non-lands, so moving on to the mana base here. These are our rainbow lands, in that I mean they're lands that add any color of mana, or at least any color that we care about having. So we've got our Triumph here, Zaitor's Proving Ground, Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, Path of Ancestry, and then this new one, Twisted Landscape. And I just want to say, I think this land cycle from Modern Horizons 3 is very good for Commander. I would probably want to play this in basically any 3-color deck, so yeah, definitely playing a Twisted Landscape there. Here are the utility lands that we're playing. So Takenuma here, it's awesome for this deck. It mills you, it rebuys stuff, so you can get a lot of value out of that. Boseiju, obviously, it's good. These ones, though, these are new ones out of Modern Horizons 3, and I have them in the utility land category because I'm playing these in land slots. So in total, including these, I believe there are 36 lands in the deck, but I'm playing this mainly as a land, and then if I happen to not want a land or want this effect, I have it. So this one is a green-black one. Comes into play tapped on the other side, but the instant says you can put a +1/+1 counter on a creature. It gains indestructible till end of turn for just 1 mana. That seems really good. This one is awesome because it can come into play untapped, but it's also just a removal spell. Destroy a creature or planeswalker for 4 mana at instant speed. That's really good. And the Disciple of Freyalise here comes into play untapped if you pay 3 life, and you can tap for a green. But the creature part of it, you can get a lot of value out of this. When it enters the battlefield, you can sack another creature. If you do, you gain X life and draw X cards, where X is that creature's power. And since, you know, we want to be playing big creatures, the idea is to have our Goyfs as big as possible. This can get you a lot of value. But we're playing these as lands, and if we end up casting them as spells, that's good too. We got some fetch lands here. You can see I'm playing more than just the 3 on-color ones. I'm playing some off-color fetch lands as well for a couple of reasons. In Boomerjund and Modern, its mana base was typically quite painful. It was a little bit difficult to navigate, and also it played a lot of fetch lands. So I've kind of taken that idea and applied it to this deck too by playing more fetch lands than I normally would. Also, they're just good. I mean, you want to be playing fetch lands, so upping the number of them is typically not a bad strategy. Here are a bunch of various mana-producing dual lands. Got a bunch of different types here. Obviously, we're playing our 3 shocks. Also playing all 3 of the Surveil lands. These ones are particularly good in this deck because this could be, you know, you play your land, you mill over a Goyf, you just put it into play. Seems pretty decent to me. Got an Undergrowth Stadium here, Mossfire Valley, Viridescent Bog, Shadow Blood Ridge, Grove of the Burn Willows, and then Nurturing Peatland here. This one is also straight out of the Modern deck, the Jund Modern deck. I guess this one could also be utility land, but I like that I've taken this straight out of my Modern deck. And then one other land here, which normally I would not be playing, but I actually quite like having it in this deck. Raging Ravine here. So it's not that good in Commander. It is a dual land. It comes into play tapped, though. The creature part of it, it's okay. You know, it can attack and block and things like that, but usually not as good in Commander as some other effects would be. But I actually really like having this in this deck because for the longest time in Modern Boomerjund, they would be playing the one of Raging Ravine. Sometimes there would be more, but a lot of the time there would be one of. I had this as a one of in my deck for a long time just because sometimes you can just get there with your creature land. And I just really like this for the, you know, the thematic and nostalgic purpose. I think it fits very well with the theme. Then last but not least, our basic lands. I've got 2 of each, 2 mountain, 2 swamp, 2 forest. So as I was saying, there's not that many, but also that fits well with the theme because Modern Boomerjund typically would play very few basic lands. And one other thing though is that by having very few of these, that helps a lot with Hermit Druid, which is potentially one of the most powerful cards in the deck. So you know, helping out your Hermit Druid can kind of go a long way. But I feel like 6 is enough, you know, it's enough to reliably be able to search out whatever we want if we got our Cultivate or something like that. And then for our other cards like Nature's Lore or 3 Visits, those can go and get a Shockland or a Surveil Land or something. So I think 6 basics is enough. Honestly, you could probably get away with playing even less. So that is the Goyf Tribal Boomerjund Commander deck. I do like this deck a lot. It's very fun. I'm happy with how it turned out. And also, I'm happy to be able to continue to play these cards in at least some format, because, as I was saying, I was playing Jund in Modern probably longer than I should have been. It's not a bad deck. It's still a good deck. I maintain that it's playable in Modern, but, you know, it keeps on getting power crept out to the point where if I actually wanted to win a Modern tournament, I probably would be playing something else. But I can continue to play it in this commander deck. So let me know your thoughts on the deck. Did you build a Disa deck, and how is it different than mine? I'm sure there's probably a lot of cards I could put in here. Like I was saying, if you wanted to maximize the power level, you could take advantage of the synergy between this and Maskwood Nexus and Ashes of the Fallen, and, you know, just tutor out combo pieces that aren't Goyfs. You could do some really cool stuff that way. I feel like there's probably some really synergistic cards that I haven't even realized for the deck, so if you have any cool ideas, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise though, thanks for watching. It'd be cool if you can like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. I'd encourage everyone to come join my Discord server. You can find a link to that in the video description below. And in the video description, you can also find a link to my store, the Snug and Dave store, where you can purchase this playmat right here, as well as some other cool playmats and custom tokens that we've designed. And they do ship worldwide. And also, I'd just like to take a moment to thank all the patrons that support me on Patreon. Otherwise though, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.